Coach, welcome to the desert.
Thank you.
So let's kind of step back a couple months, maybe even further than that.
Yeah.
When did this position first come on your radar?
I think a little bit earlier in the spring, I had kind of heard about maybe there would be changes here, but that didn't really register with me too much. It kind of formally came on my radar in April, actually, just before I went to the meet in Mesa when I was contacted by the administration here. And they started telling me their vision for what they wanted, and that's when I seriously started thinking about it.
Were you looking for other positions at that point?
I was not, and it came as quite a surprise. But I had always thought that maybe after Michael was finished, if indeed this is the end, it seems to keep coming back, I might want to go back to a college position. I really liked my time at Michigan. I felt like there were some things that I wanted to do, in college that really haven't done yet. So I had sort of just thought about the kind of things that I would like to have in a program. And when this opportunity came up, it started checking all the boxes of what I wanted. So it, was a surprise in the timing, and that's what I think has been the biggest, sort of surprise for me personally.
What were some of the boxes?
The boxes were, I wanted to coach men and women. I wanted to have a program where there was support in place to get the job done at the top level, to be able to compete for a championship. So I had to have all those resources available. Actually, I wanted a program that I could build up, that wasn't necessarily already at the top, and it would just be kind of a caretaking job, So this really fit all of this.
Before you made this decision, who did you discuss it with?
I discussed it with my agent, Peter Carlisle, discussed it with Michael, my business partner, and, longtime family member, really. Discussed it with my family and made the call.
What kind of questions did you need answers to when you were kind of playing around with it and figuring out if this was indeed the next move?
Well, I needed to talk with Michael to see if this could fit into what we already have going long term, and to Peter, really, because he made makes the business decisions for us in many ways. And, we determined that not only would it work, but it, might even be better. A good situation is, I think Michael and I are both kind of not anxious, but looking forward to kind of a new start, just kind of a reset as we go into this final Olympics. We've done it before, 2004, 2008 is kind of a pattern in our past.
I think that one worked out pretty well for
and
you.
both of them did okay. So I didn't have any fear in terms of that it would be a bad thing. Michael felt really good about it because he knew it's something I really wanted to do. And I felt like that made me feel good, because he was like, I'm really so excited for you, because this would be good. And Peter felt like it made a lot of sense as well, kind of going forward. And, ideally, the timing would be better a year from now, so that, I just finish up, have an Olympics, come here and do my thing. But when this came up, I remember thinking to myself, well, there have been some things in the past that came up, and I immediately discounted them because of the timing. And I was like, well, when is the timing ever going to be right? So this was one that spoke to me so strongly, I just said, let's do it.
Give us an update on the current status for the program, because it was just a couple years ago that it was on the chopping block. So obviously that's something that you had to feel secure about before you would make a move like this.
Current status of the program is that we're fully funded, we're going to be fully staffed. And I will make a caveat of saying the fully staffed. I'm going to use a GA this year and a fourth coach position, and then add that next year, because I just wanted to have a little bit of a transition, and there was somebody good that I wanted to use. We have the full support of the athletic department and our alumni. And there's also a very sound plan in place for paying for the things that we need to do in the future. So I felt like from that standpoint, everything was in place. Most importantly, we have a philosophical backing from the top level of this university all the way down, from President Crow to Ray Anderson, the athletic director, all the way down to us. So we have the complete support of the administration side, and there's a ton of enthusiasm from the alumni who are excited that the program's not only back, but it's going to be able to, move forward. So I'm pretty confident that everything is as good as it can be. I'm not sure it could be better right now.
Has college swimming changed since your time at Michigan?
In some ways, I guess, but I haven't figured them all out yet. This seems to be relatively similar. Recruiting is the name of the game, and we're going to live and die by recruiting. So I'm putting quite a bit of thought into that and how we can, make things more attractive to a wide range of athletes, particularly those at the top level who haven't really considered Arizona State in the past. So,
have you changed since your time at Michigan?
Very much.
How?
Well, I'm just more experienced, and honestly, when I was at Michigan and I'd left, after a relatively short time, for good reasons, I have no regrets about it, but there were some things when I left, I had kind of figured out the game for my last 2 years. So I really got 2 years where I was kind of really doing it, and the first 2 years were just trying to figure it out. And I always was saying, well, man, if I could just go back now and start at Michigan, we would have been so much better at the end because I would have understood things so much better.
Well, I mean, the results even after you left, the success that they
continued. Yeah, exactly. And I think we were doing the right things, but I think it just, in experience, I made some poor decisions early on. That's how it works.
So I'd love to get into all of the coaching philosophy training, but let's try to kind of get into just one angle of it. Mm-hmm. What would one misconception you think be of your training philosophy out there?
That I run a really high volume program, and I just don't think it's true. We probably, with the middle distance athletes, are at 50, and it goes down from there. The distance people might do 70, but we're talking about, Sierra Runge and Lotta Freeze and Becca Mann, people doing a 10K and 1,500 meters, or so they might be 70, which I still don't, in real perspective, consider super high volume. I mean, it kind of is. So I think that's probably the biggest misconception. Along those lines, if somebody did ask me, well, are you going to have enough time to run your program in 20 hours? And I seriously went back and looked at the workouts that we've done in Baltimore, really at Michigan, over the time. And I have never gone over 2 hours. And actually in Baltimore, we don't go over about an hour and 45 minutes of training. Because what we do, we do move along, but I don't do a lot of super long practices, and I've never gone over 2 hours. It's just I feel like if you go over that, it's just kind of worthless.
What would you look at as the biggest strength of the ASU swimming program right now?
That's a great question. The biggest strength is that we have tremendous support and a vision to go somewhere. Now, it's my job to turn the potential into actual, which is, we know, a tough job. But what we have right now is this entire university working together on something that could be very exciting, not just for the university, but for the community and really for USA Swimming or just swimming in general. And that's one of the things that spoke to me about ASU. I think that, people have conceptions about universities and colleges and how they operate and what they're about. And one of the things that I found in my research about ASU, because I really looked into it carefully, is that our president, Michael Crow, over the last decade, has basically been at the forefront of reinventing higher education in this country. It's based on a concept of inclusivity versus exclusivity. And I sit back and I think, and I'm like, why would an educational entity really want to kind of build itself on keeping people out? We want to bring people in. Having said that, you can look at things like the Barrett Honors College, which is ranked #1 in the country, right here. So there are avenues for people who want to pursue academics at the very highest level they can be here. There are avenues for people who want to pursue different career paths. So there's a lot of options here that aren't really available in other schools, and there are a lot of ways that those can be attained. ASU is the leader in online education. It's the #1 international, has the highest international population of any university in the United States, so it's a very diverse cultural institution. So a lot of those things really spoke to me because I wanted to kind of reinvent the way that college swimming might be delivered to our clientele, and produce a program that could allow people to come in and, be in a program that would compete at the top level while pursuing an education that will take them to the next step, but to do it in a way that might not just be the way it's been done for the last 30 years. And that's kind of spoke to me. I believe in education quite a bit, and I also believe in creativity and flexibility, and those are two words that Ray Anderson, my athletic director, used when we had our meeting. And I love that concept of doing things that are not just by the book, the way they've always been done. And that's what we're going to try to do here.
Does that inclusive approach to the student body here change the type of swimmer you will recruit?
No, it just expands who we can recruit. I think that, we will have access to a much wider population of swimmers. But within that, I think that, if someone has aspirations of, being in a very rigorous academic climate, they can do that. If they want to be in a climate where maybe it's not the, 100th percentile of rigor, but it might be 80 or 70, they can do that as well. And they can kind of come up with plans that work for them. And I like that. I just don't like trying to always fit people into one mold. I think that's interesting and something I'd like to get into.
What's the biggest need that you see right now with the swimming program?
That's a good question. The biggest need is for everyone to pull together, right? To buy into our vision and to start working toward it on a daily basis. That's it. If we do that, the other stuff will work itself out along the way.
Creating a culture.
Exactly. Creating a culture. Cultural change.
Lay it out for us. What does your ideal culture look like?
My ideal culture is based on accountability, personal accountability as an individual to the collective group. The thing that I wanted to get back to college swimming mainly for was this energy and power that the group has. That we're here for Arizona State University. We have some goals as a program. We have some goals as individuals which fit into that. But we're trying to do something bigger than ourselves. It's not just about one person or two person trying to reach some level. So I think creating a culture where the team is more important than the individuals, where we have a clear direction that we're headed, where people are accountable to each other in that. And that should parallel essentially what they do in their educational pursuits. You're here to get an education, but you're also here to be part of a larger community of this university and to use all of the resources that are available to help you as you make that journey. And I think for me personally, I was very interested in getting back into the more of a teacher mode, instead of just being, someone who does a training plan and picks out some meets and does this thing. I very much look forward to helping these young people kind of go through this process, because the college age it's a great age in many ways, because you're really going from kind of been at home, your parents have kind of helped you do things, now you're on your own for the first time, but not really, because we're still able to help you, and then you'll kind of step off into the next level. So I think that's what I like the most about it. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And it kind of led into the next area I want to talk about, which is goals. It's always something that's very big with you and your coaching. And I just wondered if you could give us a glimpse, not into the specific goals necessarily, but how you will change the culture through the goal setting process.
Got it. We're going to start, it's what I typically do is start with the end, where we kind of want to be, and work backwards. And in this case, I'm actually going to reverse engineer it. I'm going to walk in here and figure out where all these people are and start taking steps forward. And then from there, sort of formulate what the next more long-term step is, and a long-term step. The key thing for me, and I kind of explained that to the staff when we had a meeting this morning, first one we ever had, was to the most important thing we're going to do in the midst of all this kind of forward thinking, which, that's why we're, all this enthusiasm for the future is great. But our most important job is to serve the student athletes who are here right now, to do the very best job we can with them, to not only help them, get their degrees and move through their education, but to swim faster than they ever have and do it better and build a culture while we're doing that. And that in turn will lead to all the other stuff down the road. As a coach in the Pac-12 conference, we're kind of up against it because I don't have the luxury of having, at Michigan, we had a very solid goal of trying to win the Big Ten Conference. And that was a great goal because it moved us into the top level of teams in the country, but not at the very top. In the Pac-12, if I win the Pac-12s, I'm probably going to have to win the NC2As, or vice versa. It's kind of the same thing.
At least in the game.
At least we're right there. So that's a big jump from where we are. So we're going to have to come up with some things between where we are now and where we will ultimately end up that are meaningful and will help bring in the type of people that are going to help us do that.
So because of the situation within the conference, you kind of have to approach your goal setting a little differently?
Just a little bit differently, and honestly the same principles apply. Where are we today? Everybody has a picture of that. Where are we going to be somewhere down the road? I just think we're going to look a little more short term. We're going to try to get a little bit better each day and focus on that and then see where that takes us.
I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit just on goal setting as a coach.
Sure.
How do you handle failure to reach a goal?
Yeah.
Because expectations can be sometimes, can be a bad thing. If you're not reaching those expectations, failure can lead to shame and all of these impactful things that are happening to these people as they're coming through this crucial time in their life.
Exactly. No, I think that's true. Well, number one is part of the process that's really important because that's where you learn the most is failure, right? When you kind of work for something and you set out your plan and you achieve it, what do? You pat yourself on the back and feel good about it, as you should. But what happens often, and we see this a lot in athletes, is they don't take the next step because there's no real impetus to do it. You've achieved something. When you fail to get somewhere, that's when you get the most meaningful learning, because then you have to look back at what you did or did not do and say, okay, how did we get where we are today? And what are the things that I would change going forward to get to the result that we want? So when I have someone that sets a goal and fails to get there, that's your prime time for learning. And quite frankly, if it's not hard and it doesn't hurt, you're not going to be as motivated to do something to get better. It probably means the goal wasn't that important to you if it doesn't bother you that you failed. And I try to get athletes or anybody, people I work with, when they kind of set out to do something and it doesn't happen, to look at the reasons why, to take away some things that they can change, and the changes are usually personal. What am I going to change? Like in this program, we start setting out on this course, and 3 or 4 years down the road, we're not there. I've got to make some changes. And, that will affect the other people who will make some changes, and, it kind of spirals down from there. But I think if you operate from a standpoint of an educated goal setting process, so you're setting a goal that's challenging but doable, and that's where coaches come in. Like, you're working with your athletes. That's one of your main jobs, is to tell them what is possible, but not in a way that's unrealistic. I'd like to tell every 8 and under on North Baltimore Aquatic Club that you can make the Olympics. And you know what? That's true, probably on some level, but not in reality. 1 out of 200 can make it. You know what I mean? So the other ones have to work on something that's going to make them feel good, because really the value of the process is not necessarily an Olympic gold medal. The process is what's the most important thing. It's the lessons that you learned along the way, because everybody's going to have to rely on those long after they're finished with swimming.
So how do you implement that day-to-day focus in a system that's built so heavily around goals?
Well, it's the same thing, but it's just like brought back to the, what I tell people is like they're all kind of goals, right? So you have your sort of long-term dream type goal, and that's emotional, and that is, ASU swimming will contend for national titles. Okay, we're all in. Everybody wants to do that. We're very excited about it. Okay, then you got to figure out, well, when. It's out there. It is not next year, I promise, or 2 years, or 4 years maybe. Okay, so that's something that's out there that when I get up in the morning and I'm feeling kind of not motivated, that just gets me going, right? That's what I'm here to do, and that's something that's exciting. You then start working back into the long term. So if we're someday going to end up at this dream goal, what is the path that we're going to take to get there? And you can kind of break it into chunks. And you say, well, in 4 years, we want to be in the top 3. Okay? Is that doable? I don't know. Find out soon, but it's probably a good goal, I'd say. Okay? So we're going to work towards that. So if we're going to be in the top 3 in 4 or 5 years, where do we work back to 2 years? Well, we're going to be in the top 10 sometime. It's in there. How about in a couple years? So then you just work it all the way back to the most important decision, and that is, what am I going to do right now that's going to help that happen? And for me, it's giving an interview to you, because you're going to share all this wonderful information with people who are going to come help us reach those goals.
And it is wonderful information. I'm happy to play my part. How do the goals differ for the college program, which you just did a great job of laying out, versus your post-grad program that's on their way here in August?
Well, the post-grad program has a very immediate and specific goal, and that is to swim as fast as they can, next June and next August. And they've been working on those for quite a while. So this is sort of the end of a long process for them, where we're at the beginning of a long process with the college team. So clearly they have some more specific things they're going to be focused on, and we're going to be working to help them kind of fine-tune things to get to the top level, hopefully.
How do you balance it? Postgrads and college program. Obviously, there's 2 things that are pulling you in different directions. College program is built around short course yards. Postgrads are obviously focused on long course meters and those international meets.
Sure.
How do you balance?
Well, there are some practical ways, there are some philosophical ways. And I will tell you exactly what I told my assistant coaches this morning, because I think it's very true. If we, in a perfect world, were going to design how I came into ASU swimming, I probably wouldn't be finishing my last year of Olympic preparation with these other guys and starting, but it's kind of where we are, and it's fine. But, I'm going to tell the athletes, and they already know this, I told them in my first meeting with them, that, we're just going to be pretty flexible this first year, It's kind of like a startup business is how I see it, There are a lot of variables we're trying to deal with. I'm doing a lot of things besides just coming in with a training plan. You just saw me picking out paint colors for these walls. We're renovating this entire facility. So I want to get that started. But in terms of how I'm going to interact with the Olympic training group and the college group, I'm going to run this very similar to how I did in Michigan in 2008. Again, we had some decent results. In that a lot of time it's going to be separate. Like most of the practices during the week, I'm going to be focusing on one group or another. And then both sides are going to have to be a little bit flexible in terms of what I personally do in their development. And it kind of speaks to what we were talking about, accountability, right? At some point it's about your swimming. It's not about whether I'm standing there watching it or not. So, the college team is going to have to understand that if I go to a Grand Prix meet, and I'm not here for practice a couple days, that's something that is going to be part of the equation for this next year. It's not going to be part of the equation after that. But during this preparation, it is. The postgrads are going to have to understand that if I'm going to the Pac-12 men and women and NC2A men and women, that I'm really not going to be around too much, and it's okay for them to go to Colorado Springs with the coach that I choose and have a training camp for a month, and I won't be there. And they're clear on that. So it's basically back to flexibility. I have to be a little bit creative with my time and how I put it together, and quite frankly, I'm going to make a huge time investment on the deck, which would be very interesting in the heat here, but and that's how I'm going to approach it, is that both sides have to give a little bit, but both sides will actually in the end get what they want and need, and I think it'll work pretty well. It certainly did when we did it in Michigan.
When it comes to those pros, I mean, I've wanted to ask you this for a while, just knowing how it is to work with a professional athlete at the Olympic level, and knowing that you have multiple Olympic level athletes, and knowing the needs that each individual has. I mean, is that the biggest challenge, is meeting the specific needs of each individual? And if not, what is the biggest challenge?
No, that probably is the biggest challenge.
How do you balance it?
Well, I have a little experience, so that helps, you know. And I really have the thing that I have with most of these guys, almost all of the ones, they've been with me for a very long time. So, you know, I've known Chase since he was 8. So we have we sort of know how each other ticks, and we know which works and we know what doesn't, and we've kind of been through the good, the bad, the ugly. Same with Michael, Allison, you know, all of those people. So I sort of have a big repertoire of things that I understand and can use with them when they have certain situations. Like, you know, if I see Michael going in a certain direction in his training, or his, you know, attitude seems to be going a certain way, well, I have a few things that I pretty much am right on about. Okay, this is what we need to do. Same with Allison. There are always surprises, you know, but I do think that as a coach, that's why I'm here, and I'm pretty in tune with it, and I also have a big support staff that, you know, are going to kind of help us do that as well.
How will your pro group change coming here to Tempe?
They're going to be more independent, which is good. They're going to have to take a little bit more responsibility for themselves in terms of how things operate, you know, because I'm going to not be that available to help them with logistical things, you know, or, you know, they're going to be doing their own travel arrangements. They're going to be doing some other things, where in Baltimore we just did it all for them. I'm not sure that was good anyway, but I think that's the biggest change. They'll have to be a little more self-sufficient.
Swimming outside, it might be a little bit more appealing than swimming in Baltimore. Who's going to be allowed to train with your pro group?
It's going to be allowed.
Well, I mean, you got to have some
no. There are.
Can I come train with your pro group?
No, exactly. No, you can for sure. You know, I'm trying to keep it relatively small, and I'll give you the same answer I gave one of your competitors, and that is, you know, the individual athletes are free to talk about their own story and where they're going to train and how and all of that. I'm not going to approach that in this setting. You know, it's like, you know, Michael, Allison, Chase have kind of confirmed to people that they're going to do that. And when other athletes do that, they're certainly welcome to do it. There will be a group that will have a decent size. You know, I've been working with some Turkish athletes. They'll be part of it, a few of them, very small number, 3 or 4. And so I want to have a group where there is enough energy that it's not just like private lessons, but I don't want to have a huge group either. It's going to be very similar to my Club Wolverine group, which was about 12 people. So,
speaking of private lessons, a big thing in the announcement when Ray brought you on was that this is going to be the biggest Learn to Swim program in the NC2A, and that affiliation is a little bit confusing, I think, to some. Can you explain what the Learn to Swim program is and what it's going to be?
I think the Learn to Swim program idea from Ray comes from a bigger vision of serving this community. And one of the things that he looks at, and I have looked at when I came here, is it's not just Mona Plummer Aquatic Center. There are several facilities on campus where we can provide instruction for people to learn how to swim. And one of the most important gifts that we could give a community is to teach people how to swim. And there are any number of ways that can happen. You know, it can happen through, you know, grant programs that USA Swimming does, which is for underprivileged kids, and we certainly want to do that. It can happen through just more of a standard Learn to Swim program, you know, where people come in, pay for it, we offer the things. And I think we're looking at a wide range of those. We haven't necessarily settled on anything, but we want to be able to serve the community in that aspect because we have pools and we can use them, and it's just the right thing to do. And I think that's what we're talking about. It's not like a big, you know, financial move. I mean, I don't think we're going to get rich off of teaching lessons, because we're going to want to there are limitations to what we can do. I mean, I could fill this place up all day with lessons, but it wouldn't fund a college swimming program. You know what I mean? It would help. But I think there's going to be a mix of things that we do for the community, kind of just as goodwill, and then a mix of things that we can offer if they choose to go to another level of service.
Will yours and Michael's swim school expand out here?
We're in the talks about it. Coincidentally, we had already sort of reached an agreement to expand in other entities here outside of ASU. So this may actually be some part of it. Yeah.
Last question. Mm-hmm. It's impossible to foresee the future.
Yeah.
But is this your last stop?
This is my last stop of coaching. Mm-hmm. And I say that with all sincerity. I want to be able to stay here long enough to get the job done, and that will take me long enough to be finished with coaching. I just turned 50, so I have some good years ahead of me, but I would like for this to be the place where I it's my last chapter of coaching. Yeah. And one of the reasons I came was I felt like in North Baltimore and in club swimming, that was kind of through 2016 was my last chapter. I think if I had stayed in Baltimore, I don't think I would have continued coaching the club there. It's time for Eric to move up. He's ready. The club's ready. They need a long-term vision. I certainly I didn't see myself doing that for 10 years or 20 years, but I see myself doing this. So yeah, this is it.
Awesome.
Okay.
We're so happy to have you on the pool deck here in Arizona. So.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Garrett.